professional.
Well, hello, St. Peter's. Welcome to our interview for Faithfulness on the Front Line. I'm here with Chandran and Rachel. Chandran and Rachel, would you like to introduce yourselves to the St. Peter's family? Who are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm Rachel, and we've been St. Peter's since 2007. So we have two boys, Rohit and Nathaniel, who are grown up now. So one's working in Birmingham and the other one is in uni. So they're not in church as often as they used to before. As far as my work goes, I'm a GP in Bolton. And over to Chandran.
Hi, I'm Chandran, and I'm a consultant anaesthetist. I work in Manchester Royal Infirmary. The rest Rachel's already said.
Fantastic. Well, and just so that folks are aware, because some folks will be aware in the life of the church, some won't. You boys were poorly recently. How are you both, and how is the family?
We are all fine, by God's grace. They had fairly mild symptoms of COVID, and they've recovered. And we've not had any new changes in symptoms. So yeah, thank you for your prayers, and we're doing well.
That's great. Well, you've been in our prayers as a family, and it's great to hear that everyone's well, and we thank God for that. So I'll start with our first question. How did you guys become a Christian?
Right, she wants me to go. Okay, so I was brought up in a Christian family. My grandfather was a priest in India, and he had a story to tell about how he became a Christian. And he was one of those people who always encouraged us to read a lot. And whenever we went to holidays to his place, he always gave us books and biographies to read. I probably have been more than once responded to altar calls. And the earliest I can remember was when I was in primary school. But really, my faith was strengthened, tested, and I found my own ideas probably when I was in university. I went to Christian Medical College, which is in Vellore in South India. There's a big story to tell about that. But there was when my faith grew. And so it wasn't like some people have a moment when you can say, I became a Christian. But I've grown in my journey with Christ. That's how I put it.
Rachel, how about you?
Yeah, so it's sort of quite similar. And like Chandran said, there wasn't any like a flash, a big bang, and suddenly, I felt God's presence and I became this person. And I always sometimes feel, people have these wonderful stories to tell, but I don't have one of those. It was quite plain and simple. Like Chandran, I grew up in a Christian family. And as far as I can remember, we were always taken to church. We went to church, went to junior church, got confirmed, baptized, went through all of that. And both my parents, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, we all had this thing about faith. Every Sunday before lunch, we had to memorize Bible verses or hymns and recite it to the family, our parents, and then we'd have lunch. And at that point, it was almost like what a horrible, boring thing to do. But now when I look back, I think that was one of the best things that we did, because it's all in your head, whether you liked it then. But to me now, it sort of helps me recollect old hymns and verses when I need it. And went to university, and again there it was had a very good pastor, a nice evangelical church that we went to, and I think that's where my faith, my individual faith, sort of grew. And then it's just been sort of ups and downs, and been, so God's always been there and been faithful. And it's me sometimes who sort of not being close to him at all times, but I think that's my story.
Yeah, There's something I always say this to folk. There's always something quite wonderful when people say, "Wow, all I've ever known is being a Christian," from childhood, because it's almost like breathing. It's just a natural part to who you are, and that in of itself is a wonderful testimony, I think. To know that God's been with you. So, kind of with that in mind, you've talked about the different experiences. University has been a big key part in both of your lives for the formation of your faith. What would you say your faith means to you both now? We'll start with Rachel. What does your faith mean to you?
Yeah. So I think, like you said, it's because it's been with me since I was born. It's like breathing. So it is like a bit like that. It's not like Faith and Rachel. I think whether you like it, whether I like it, or whether I'm conscious about it, it's there all the time in most decisions that you make, or you might not be right all the time, and you might not be nice to people all the time, but you're conscious, constantly aware of God's presence in your life. And I think that is the most helpful thing for me, is I know that when I don't feel so great, or I need a big decision to be made, or something about the children, work, I know I can fall back, or I can lean on God and my faith. And I think that's what's important to me, I think. And that's how my faith is in my life.
Yeah. How about yourself, Chandran?
Yeah, meaning I think Rachel agrees. Not to say that we are holy all the time or perfect all the time, but really I can't imagine life without my faith. I don't want people to think that I'm saying I'm good. I'm not. And that makes it even more necessary. I really can't think of what I am without being a Christian or walking with Christ.
So we're in the midst of a difficult situation that our country's never faced before, and it's a tricky time for everyone, and you're both on the front line in different ways. What has your faith meant for you during this time of the pandemic?
I think one of the things that you sense when you're at work, when I am at work, is a sense of fear and anxiety, which is there everywhere. You can almost feel it. It's there in patients. It's there in the health workers. It's just there. A certain amount of, are we doing the right thing? Is this what we should be doing? Do we have enough? And that sense of uncertainty and fear. And in that situation, meaning, what's helped me is what our faith tells us, that God is with us. He went through that, and especially this time of Easter and Good Friday, I think several people have highlighted it in several ways, that it was a time of uncertainty for the disciples. There was a lot of fear, and Christ comes in and says, "Peace be with you." And really, we've been, even when we got the test results for our boys, we were quite anxious and fearful of what that means, because though the general public know things could go badly wrong, when you're in it, you know how badly wrong they can go. So, and again, it was times like that when God, through different people, sends you a verse or you read something, and suddenly it's almost like God is speaking to you and saying, "Peace, I am with you." And that means a lot in things. And one of the things that I pray for is that peace and the sense of being aware of what's around and where God wants me to maybe be channel of that peace to people I meet and people who need it.
How about yourself, Rachel?
Yeah, as far as workplace, it's very similar, because being a GP in a small practice and a partner, sometimes you need to be the sense of sort of a support for your staff, for your nurses, for your trainees, And I think I hope that I am able to do that, and God gives me the strength to be able to be that sense of support where people can come and talk to me. And I think it's been useful in things that we've done at work, where we've talked about thoughts for the day, and we've had verses from the Bible. What I've just said, I've not said it's from the Bible, but I've said, oh, this is what I read today, and people have actually said, oh, that's really good, and things like that. So I just feel that God needs to help us all to work together, and give us all the strength, and not have this anxiety that's, though we don't talk about it, I think it's there. You can feel it, can't you? So yeah, so I think that's one thing that faith does help you through that, I think.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, what else was I going to say? And also sometimes the way we are working is quite different now. We're doing lots of video consultations and telephone consultations, and sometimes you're worried whether you've missed something, you've not done things as normally you would do if somebody's sitting in front of you. So we just need that assurance and the wisdom that only comes from God to make sure we're making right decisions all the time.
Yeah. What you said actually reminds me of when Jesus chats with Thomas, and he says to Thomas, "Peace." In the Greek, it's eirene, is the Greek word, and it's like a whole physical peace that is needed. And you're right, it's vital, particularly in the scenarios that you're working in, to know God's peace in the midst of what's going on. So with that peace in mind, you've chosen a kind of hymn or a song that's special for you. Do you want to share what that hymn and that song is to us, and why it means so much to you both?
So actually, you start with yours.
So we've got two songs, I think. But basically, songs and music is something that both of us like. And the one that I've sent you, which is "He is Always Faithful to Me" by Sarah Groves. I don't know if many people are familiar, and I almost accidentally came upon her. And that is really wonderful words, which basically says, morning by morning, I wake up to see the amazing thing that God is faithful, and He's always faithful to me. I've sent the words and thing. Yeah. And whenever I hear that, I feel it is so true. And when you look back in your life, you see several incidences where God has been always faithful. And I'm just going to look at the actual words. It says, I can't remember a trial or pain He did not recycle to bring me gain. I can't remember one single regret in serving God, only trusting His hand. This is my anthem, this is my song, the theme of the stories I've heard for so long. God has been faithful. He will be again. His loving compassion, it knows no end. All I have needed, His hand will provide. He's always been faithful. He's always been faithful. And I think it's been so true in our lives, in my life. So at this moment, that's my favorite hymn.
How about yourself, Rachel?
So I love that song as well, but there's so many songs to choose from that when I thought, oh my God, what should I choose? So I like How Great Thou Art. I've always loved the words for that. And I like the verse about the Easter story where, God died for us. And at the end when it says that, you'll be praising God, and then at that point in heaven, when I see Him, I will say, how great Thou art. And that's always been a very emotional song for me. And I also like the one, with the good Father.
Only allowed one.
Yeah. So I couldn't choose, so I just said I'll choose those two, and I think him and one more contemporary one, and I think and I think I just couldn't narrow it down anymore. So there's so many ones that I could pick.
Well, I will include links to those three songs. You're pushing the bounds there, Rachel. Unbelievable. I'll include the links, and I'll put the word lyrics for Chandran, the song that you've selected as well, so that people can have a read through that. Because but all of those three songs, I think, you're right, they speak into what we're going through right now, and what's happening in our world. And I think they you know, the great power of worship songs is that when people read scripture, they write beautiful songs like that, and it speaks to what God's doing in our lives. So St. Peter's folks who are watching this, or anyone else further afield, do have a look at those worship songs, and perhaps use them as you pray. So with prayer in mind, how can we as a church family be praying for you both in your life and in your work?
So just obviously I mentioned a few things about work already, and so just those things where, you know, working for our staff and the new ways of working, and how that it incorporates in our lives, and how we can do the best we can for our patients and not miss anything. And another, on a personal thing, would be to pray for our families who are far away in India with elderly parents. I think that's a big worry for us, because they're so far away, and we just hope that nothing goes wrong, because we can't even go if they need us. So that's always been not a worry, but it's just a prayer request, if people could, you know, pray for that.
Yeah, I think that God would be with us, protection, of course, but also making us more aware of what He's doing around us, and how we can get involved in that. Of course, we need wisdom, we need patience, we need physical and mental strength to do what can sometimes be very difficult. It's not always, but there are times when it is quite a difficult job to do. And in general, I think I really think people should pray hard for people making decisions, like, you know, the Prime Minister, his cabinet, the researchers, the people who are really working hard to find a solution to this, for wisdom and breakthroughs that's only God can give. And there are people who are working with much less facilities and protection than we have. So there are a lot of people who need prayers.
And also to say thanks to wonderful neighbors who've helped us, and our network, our neighborhood network's been brilliant. So it's thanks to people, friends, church members. Definitely a big thanks to all of them.
Well, St. Peter's, do hold Chandran and Rachel and their whole family in your prayers. Do lift them up and lift their colleagues up as well. I'm certain their colleagues would appreciate some prayers being said for them as well. And certainly, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the church for you guys taking this time out to share your story of God at work in your life, and to show and to show that actually wherever we are, we're on the front line of the ministry with Jesus. It doesn't matter if you're a vicar or, you know, whatever you're doing can be done for Jesus. And it's wonderful to hear that story that you've shared with us. So please be assured of our prayers, and we will, if you, St. Peter's, have a look down below at the links, okay? The links for the worship song will be down on there for you. So take care. God bless. See you soon.